Hi there. This is a demonstration on coil building a pot for making a face jug. And so there's a few different approaches we're going to take. The first one in this video, I will just make a whole pot form, which then will apply the face to. And this is pretty close to the original method of building. In the original method, they would throw a jug on the wheel and then they would apply the facial elements afterwards, after it has a chance to set up a little bit. In this case, what I'll do is do the same kind of coil building that you've seen in the African spherical pot and that is that's demonstrated in that section and also in the basic ceramic section of this class. But you'll see me once again go through the steps of coil building to build this pot. I will be using a ceramic wheel, which is not at all necessary. You can do everything I'm doing using a turntable or a banding wheel or lazy Susan, any kind of spinning item. You can even do it without that and just work by turning a board that you're working on. But I'm using the wheel to speed this presentation up so that you will be able to see it in a quicker pace to see the whole thing. And of course, right now we're in the Solano Community College ceramics facility here. And it's kind of sweet to be back here to do this video. I miss it. I miss doing face-to-face classes here. And I'm hoping that within a year we'll be able to get back. But I'll give you a little look around. Here's the wheel section. This is the hand building area here. And you can see in the back there are some of the African spherical pots we've made for this class. And there's a giant face jug in the background there. Which I will start demonstrating how that's made in the next video after this one. But right now what I'm going to do is demonstrate this technique of just coil building a full complete jug, and then we'll start applying we'll start building the face on it in a following video. So that's what we're doing right now. So let's get started. Focus on the wheel. Again, the wheel is just a tool that allows me to turn to work this to work on this pot and have it turn easily, and I can control it with my foot to make it spin. And so I'm not really throwing, though there is a method to doing this. There is an approach to doing this where I could actually throw coil and throw much more vigorously, but I'm just going to stick with the coiling approach. So I'm going to start with a ball of clay to work on this and just get that in the middle. And I like to, rather than starting with a slab, the nice thing about starting with a ball is that I can start compressing it downward as the wheel gently spins, or as you turn your turntable, banding wheel, whatever. You can also use your paddle, and of course this is the simple paddle we provided, which some of you might recognize as a 2x4. And I'm just taking great pains to make sure that it stays parallel to the wheel as I hit it. It's sticking a little bit here. The reason it's better a ball of clay rather than start out with a slab that you already have rounded, the advantage of the ball of clay is that I have to pound it down. And when you compress clay like this, it gets very strong and it's much less likely to crack. So occasionally it's sticking, and that's making this back come off the wheel. Put this back on. There we go. And so I'm just And I don't want it too thin, not too thick, but not too thin on the bottom. That feels about right. That's probably just shy of a half an inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch. And so now I have this, this clay bottom for my piece, and I'm going to just move my finger along it to take out the marks from the paddle. And I can put a little spiral in there if I want. So now what I need is I need to have this. You can see it's not exactly perfectly round. Well, that's easy to deal with. I just take my needle tool and I hold it steady, and it makes, it will give me a perfectly round base to begin with. So the other thing you can see is right here, I've already made all my coils, and that's kind of a nice way to work, to have them all ready to go. So you can just concentrate on building your piece. So I'm going to start with some coils here. And I'm just going to go through the steps that we've already learned about coil building. This is your bottom. I want to make sure this coil gets really well attached here. So I'm going to start here, and just so you can see it, I'm going to wipe my thumb in, and then I'll lift it up. Wipe it down and lift it up. And I'm always overlapping the thumb mark halfway, so I'm keeping it nice and even as I go around. Wipe it down, lift it up. So that's one of the reasons you want a little bit thicker base, is because you're going to dig some of that clay in wiping it back up into the coil. So you can see me working it all the way around and getting my first coil onto the base of this piece. Now, if you've looked at the other presentations that I've offered on this, especially the PowerPoint lecture that I did on face jugs, you'll note that the original face jugs were 6 inches tall or less. They weren't that big. They look monumental, but they weren't very big. So this piece is already, I mean, this base here is probably 8 inches maybe, and I haven't measured it, but what that means is I'll probably end up with a piece that's maybe 12 to 14 inches tall. So already I'm making some pretty contemporary ideas going forward. So you can see, if you look down here, you can see that there's a gap between the coil that I put on and the base, because I haven't worked on the outside at all. So now I'm going to go around and I'm going to work the clay by wiping, making sure I dig into the base and lift it right up into the coil. And I'm using my 2 fingers rather than a thumb. It's just a little bit of a rest for my thumb to do that. And I'm just trying to wipe the clay into the coil. I want that, when I'm done, I want that coil to think that it's always been one bit of clay, that it's always been the same piece of clay, that it's not a coil on top of a slab, but it's always been one form of clay. And then I can come back here. I'm going to use my thumb here and just push down, because I lift it up, and then I'm going to go over it again, pushing down. And then I'll show you one of the advantages of working on a wheel. Again, not necessary. It's going to be faster for us to work on a wheel, but you can work on any other form there. So now I've gone all the way around, and here's the advantage: is I can just hold my finger here and run the wheel, and I can smooth the clay and get that smoothing going. So that's pretty fast. I can take my ribs here. Here's a wooden rib, and I can just, as the clay spins, as the wheel spins, I can smooth it out much quicker than I would if I had to do it with individual wiping. So that's kind of a nice advantage of the wheel. But again, you can do it just by wiping it individually with your turntable. So now I've got the first coil on there, and I'm ready to start applying the next coil. So here I go. I put it in place, and I'm going to start working with my thumb. You can't really see it that way with my arm in the way. So I'll move with my thumb here so you can actually see me working. Here you can see me working. And every time I wipe with my thumb, I am wiping it down into the clay and I'm overlapping my previous thumb mark. So my thumb mark is almost an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch wide. And I'm coming down about halfway through it each time to overlap it. And there you go, there's another round. And then we're going now with I'm using my thumb here. I guess I want to show you how it looks. So I'll use my thumb on the outside here and just work the clay from the second coil right down into that first coil. Keep it where you can see it. And so now I've got the beginnings of the pot. You can see the base of it. And I'll keep working it here, all the way around. And let's see, here's my, so we have, as I've talked to you before, there's really 3 steps in coil building. Here's a right angle rib. And the first one you've seen, the first step is wiping with your thumb inside and outside. The second step, as we've learned, is taking a rubber rib and wiping the clay on the inside. And you can probably see that better if I do it from, I can do it with my left hand, I think, and just wipe it this way. And this is the one we talked about. This method, this wiping that you do, serves a number of different functions. Now I'm working on the outside again. Again, it's easier to see if I do it out here. So I'm wiping it here. And it serves about 5 different functions. It's certainly smoothing the surface of the clay. It is thinning out the clay that you've put on in the coil. It's also shaping the piece. You're using this method to shape the piece. It's joining the clay better. It's compressing the clay. And so it's doing a number of things. It's evening the wall thickness. All of those things are going on with this method. And again, with a wheel, I can do it a little bit faster if I wish. And then the final step is the third step of the 3-step process is working with a paddle. And this paddling is giving me the shape that I'm after. So the trick with paddling, I think, is to hit it gently, to really keep your eye on the silhouette, and to try to accomplish rather 100 strikes with the paddle than 3 strong strikes. You want to gently massage it into shape. So this is getting us along the way here. So you can see that already we've started to grow a pot here, and I'm going to move along maybe a little bit faster now, and I might bring water into it because I've shown you the method. That's coil building. So first wiping with the thumb inside and out, wiping with a rib inside and out, and then shaping with a paddle. So now I'm going to start going a little bit faster, I think. And you've seen it, so I can just get going here. And one of the things I'll do to speed things up is I'll start maybe putting on a few pieces at a time. Get maybe 3 coil lengths added on. So in this video, I'm just showing you how to make the jug itself. In a future video, I will show you how to apply the facial features and talk to you about sculpting faces in general. We've seen one video like that, but it might be helpful to see it, perhaps get some additional information. Maybe I'll go one more before I start working on the outside. So you can see I'm really moving things along. If you're new to coil building, I wouldn't add more than 1 coil at a time. I'd go through all 3 steps with 1 coil before I start adding additional coils. But that's just because it's easier. It's pretty, if you're not careful, your shape will start to get out of control. So you don't want that. You want to keep it fairly symmetrical. Now what I'm doing is wiping the outside over on this side of the clay. You can see my hand moving. You can't really see its work. I can show you what it looks like here. This is what I'm doing as I go around. Just using my fingers to wipe the clay together. And I'll come up here with my thumb just a little bit for that last top coil here. But for the bottom, I can just use my fingers to dig it in. And it's not really enough to just do one direction with this. It's sometimes helpful, it's always better to reinforce your activity. So what I can do is I can take my fingers and move my fingers in a different direction by spinning the wheel. And I'll kind of show you here. I've got these fingers just digging into the clay a little bit, and that's smearing it one to the other. Haven't started to use any water at all yet. It's all dry. And now I'm using my inside hand like this, and I'm pushing against it to use kind of my index finger, almost like a rubber rib. So there we go. We've got, you see that was a very effective way to get a lot done quickly. And you can see little places where I'm going to need to work further. I can then come with the rib and start the wiping with the rib. And as with all coil building, you can only work as long as the piece will hold its form. If you get it too high, too fast, it may want to sag. So I've now gone over the outside with the rib, and now I'm going to go over the inside with the rib by letting the wheel spin, and I'm pushing against the outside of the piece and working the clay that way as well. So we're doing pretty well here. In the original, if you look at the original Edgefield pots, they're almost vertical from the base up the sides and then closing into the jug, the mouth of the jug. So I may make it a little narrower at the bottom, we'll see. So I'm going to keep going a little bit taller. And the two methods of coil building a face jug that I'll show you. This first one, as I say, I'm building the whole pot and then I'll apply the face to it. The other one that I'll show you will be building the pot, and as I build it, I will start to make the face occur along the way. So I'll actually coil the face into the pot. That'll be a later video. But for this video, I just want to show you how to complete the actual pot. So you can see we're getting quite sizable here. Maybe put on one more. So I'm using my thumb wiping method here. This is the first step again. Wiping with a thumb, getting all the clay joined nicely together. You can see all the layers of thumb wipes inside as you look on the image there. So now I have the piece. You can see it's not perfectly symmetrical, but for a coil built piece, you wouldn't want it to be. For a coil built piece, you kind of want it to be asymmetrical. Have a little bit of that mark that comes from something that's that's created, handcrafted, and the mark of the hand and the movement. You can, if you want to use the wheel a little bit more vigorously, get much more of a symmetrical result. And I'll demonstrate a little bit of that. But right now, I'm just working the outsides. And we're getting pretty big here. We're getting pretty close to where we want to be here. I'm going to just finish this, this part here. And now maybe just use a little bit of water here. And this is a throwing move rather than a hand building, coil building move here. I'm just compressing it in a little bit with a little water. And now I'll come to the second part of this coil setup. I'm going to wipe it with a rib as it spins. So I'm using the ribbing method. My inside finger, the index finger, is acting like a rib on the inside, and just joining the clay together. as we work here. You can see the piece is getting quite large. And I could do this, as I say, on a turntable. It would just go a little slower. So I want it to go a little faster for you to watch. And now I'm going to put, I think I'll go for one more round of coils and see what becomes of it then. See me just applying the coils again. Notice it's just automatic. I go into the first step of the thumb wiping, then I go to the thumb or finger wiping on the outside, and then I finish up with I go to ribbing, and then sometimes I'll choose paddling, sometimes I don't think I need the paddling as much. So that's looking pretty good in terms of size, height. We're already now probably 5 inches or more above traditional height of these things. And we still have a little bit more to go. So I'm just gonna work this together here. So now, as we look at this piece here, we're gonna smooth it out a little bit. I'll see about the paddle. I may not need the paddle much anymore, but I could use it. Again, this is where I'm using the rib. I'm holding the rib like this against the piece. You can see it here, actually. Let's see if I can get it about where you can see it. So I'm holding the rib like this as I spin it around. And, but I have to hold it over on this side. So you see this piece here is making some progress. I want to bring it in a little bit at the top, just because it's going to be a jug, so it's going to come to a mouth here. But I want to leave room for my hand to get in, because I want more. I want to work a little bit. I'm going to use my rib to wipe that last bit of coil that I did in. But also, what I'm going to do is, if you watch this silhouette here, you'll see that I'm going to spread the pot out a little bit and make it expand just a little bit, so that it's kind of like a head, but the head gets wider in the middle. So I'm just going to get those kinds of dimensions for us by shaping it with a rib. So I'm going to go down again and just start working the bottom of the pot here. So you can see that the silhouette is changing a little bit. It's expanding a little bit. And I'm going to keep going with that just a little bit more. Put a little water here so that as I work, what will happen is that I can feel it'll slide on my arm rather than hold up too much friction. I don't want too much friction on my arm. And then I just want to spread it out a little bit here towards the very top. So let's do that. It's looking pretty good. Tighten up the surface with it. I'm using this rib here, which is a steel rib. And I guess I can move, if I move my chair here, you might be able to see it a little better. That's kind of a nice shape to be working with. So then I'm going to just add a little water with a sponge and gently squeeze in here. I could do this with the paddle as well. I don't need to do this in a throwing method, I could just tap it with a paddle to get it to come in like this. If I'm working with a turntable. Then you see what I have now is it's narrowed in, and I can start making the final effort to form the neck and the lip of the pot. I'll just scrape this down a bit so you can see the shape of the piece. And this really becomes the canvas for our efforts to create the full face jug. And you see, well, that's rather uneven there. Doesn't look like an even opening, and that's one of the advantages, again, of working on a wheel. Just take your needle tool like you did when you were making the base of the pot, and just hold your needle tool there in place, and you just cut it out there, and you have an opening to start building the neck. And it's not going to take much to make a neck, but you can see this feels a little bit high here. Let me just paddle that in. Use my paddle to shape that a little bit. And then I'm just going to add a coil here. It's a little tricky because with that cantilever inward that makes the shoulder of the pot, it's quite possible that it'll want to collapse, and I don't want it to collapse, so I'm going to be careful with that. And it's a little difficult because my hands are wet. And they should be more dry to help move the clay when I wipe the clay. But you can see I'm getting my neck of the pot made. And it's really way thicker than I need, but I'll be able to work on that after I get this in place. So now I'm going to just wipe the outside here with my fingers to get a fairly even neck. I want to really make sure that it joins in well, especially at the base here. So I'm going to go around again, just focusing on the bottom of the piece, getting it to really join in right at the base. And I want to take off the unevenness. Again, the needle tool works great for that. Let's take off that extra clay that I don't need. And that's a much thicker neck than I need. I'm just going to, that allows me to get in and really make sure it's well joined. So that is well joined in there. And just use a rib here. I'm looking for the metal rib. Here it is. To finish off this shoulder. So that's looking pretty close to finished. I just need to work on the lip and to maybe just make this a little narrower. I want the jug, the spout of it to be just a little narrower. So I'm just going to squeeze that in a little bit. That feels about right. And now you can see my actual hand movements are very much like throwing, but if I were not spinning the wheel like this, what I would do instead is just carefully work it as I spun. As I work with the Lazy Susan or the banding wheel, the turntable, I could just spin it around and get the effect that I want. And I'm just going to work on this. Now, the helpful thing is that if you do have a wheel, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and try this wheel throwing approach to hand building, to coil building. But if you don't have a wheel, all the things I'm showing you are very doable on that turntable. So now I'm just going to smooth this lip out a little bit. And again, by pushing down, bring it in, and I want to just give it a little bit of a indentation there and there. That's really an advantage of the wheel, that I can spin it that quickly and do that. So what you see now is my blank canvas to start my face jug. I can really start making it from here. And that'll be on a following video. But we can look at it together and make a few observations. I could put the mouth really low, down here, or I could put it up here. I can put the eyes. The eyes normally in a head are right in the middle, but I like to put them up here. It's certainly very much in fitting with African design here. And then a nose goes in the middle somewhere, and then a mouth can go here. And I want this mouth to be big because I'm going to try to do the technique that allows you to put teeth in it. I'm going to make a big mouth here. So that's my plan. You can kind of see, I can make those a little bolder so you can see them here. And then I'm talking about a mouth like that down there. And so that's the plan. Now, I'm pretty much done with it until I'm ready to start adding things. Sometimes it's good to let it set up a little bit, to get a little harder. That can allow you to, if you let it get a little stiffer, it gives you a little bit more, little less collapsibility and gives you a more defined shape that you don't have to worry about collapsing and pushing in. But while it's still soft, I'm going to take advantage of that because I want to make a head here that's very sculptural. And I've shown you how to make a more traditional piece. So this one I want to be a little less traditional. I'll put some kind of handle on here after I'm done. But right now I'm going to think about, okay, well, I'm going to just push in here because that will be one place I'm going to put an eye area in there. And as you may have noticed in earlier pieces, for my sculptural kinds of forms, I like a lot of asymmetry. I like things to be kind of different from side to side. Keeps the viewer interested, keeps me interested. And so I'm going to kind of make a circular disc here. Not unlike a barn owl, the face of a barn owl or something, this kind of indentation here. I don't know what it'll become, but that'll give me something to start working with when I go back to working with this. The last thing I'm going to do before I let it sit and start on the next video for you on another approach to coil building, I'm going to come in here and just undercut it a little bit at the very base using this right angle wood tool here. It allows me to dig under there and get a kind of nice clean bottom here with no clay kind of spreading out at the very base. So that gives me a very cleaned up piece. There's one more thing I need to do. So I said the last thing, but I guess I meant the second to last thing. And that is I need a cutoff wire, and I'm going to cut underneath here to separate it from the bat. I won't take it off the bat yet, but I'll just cut it off so it's separate. And you can see here, this is quite an extensive, this is probably 14 to 16 inches. I can measure it later, but that's all done with a coil building technique, as you can see. And I'm going to show you another technique related to coil building for the next video. So another coil building approach. So there's the pot now. I'll give it a little spin so you can see it. And you can see I purposely put a little indentation there, and you'll see how I work on that later on. So take my towel here. So remember, stay safe, make art.